I never expected a 5-pound dog to save my life. Cookie is a papillon mix, mostly ears, mostly attitude, and entirely convinced that she runs the household. She came into my life 2 years ago as a rescue, a trembling little thing with one ear folded wrong and a suspicious look in her eyes that I found absolutely charming. We bonded fast. She follows me from room to room, curls up against my legs at night, and watches me with an intensity that sometimes makes me feel like she understands every word I say. Turns out, she does. Or close enough. I'd seen videos online of dogs using talking buttons, small, colorful AAC devices that play a recorded word when pressed. Researchers and speech therapists had started experimenting with them for pets, and the results were astonishing. Dogs pressing outside to ask for walks, pressing water when thirsty. Simple communication that bridged the gap between species in a way that felt almost impossible. I ordered a starter kit the same night I first watched one of those videos. It took patience. Cookie is smart, but she's also stubborn, and the first few weeks were a long negotiation. I recorded my own voice into each button. Outside, play, food, water, love. Slowly, deliberately, I shaped her behavior. Every time she poured the right button and something good happened, she understood, she remembered. She built her vocabulary the same way we build ours, through repetition and reward and the slow accumulation of meaning. By the time she was 18 months old, she had 20 buttons. That's when things got interesting. She started combining them. Food water meant she wanted a treat and a drink. Outside play meant the park, not just the yard. She developed her own grammar, simple, imprecise, but unmistakably intentional. I started filming her, sending clips to friends, marveling at what was happening in my living room. Then she learned Stranger. I added it almost as an afterthought. I'd been teaching her to alert when the doorbell rang, and Stranger seemed like a logical concept. Someone outside, someone she didn't recognize. I drilled it with the UPS driver, with neighbors she'd never met, with anyone who knocked on the door. She caught on quickly, the way she always did. Within a week, she'd nailed it. Stranger meant someone unfamiliar was near. I thought I knew what that button was for. I was wrong. The first night it happened, I was asleep. It was 3 in the morning. I know because I checked my phone when the sound woke me. Cookie was in the living room, and I could hear the flat electronic voice of her button system echoing down the hallway. Stranger. I sat up in bed, heart already beating too fast. I told myself it was nothing, a dream, a sleep clumsy paw hitting the wrong button in the dark. I got up anyway, because that's what you do when you live alone and your dog tells you there's a stranger at 3 in the morning. I checked every room, every window. I stood in the kitchen for a long moment listening to the particular silence of a house that might not be empty. Nothing. I turned on the porch light and stared out through the front window at the empty street, the parked cars, the pool of orange light from the street lamp on the corner. Nothing. Cookie sat beside me, watching the door. I told her she was a good girl. I told her it was probably just a cat outside. I went back to bed and lay awake for an hour before I finally fell asleep. I put it out of my mind. 3 weeks later, I was working from home when the doorbell rang. Cookie shot off the couch before I even registered the sound, and by the time I reached the hallway, she'd already pressed her button. Stranger. It was the UPS driver, a different one than usual. New face, new truck. Cookie confirmed what I already knew and I praised her, gave her a treat, and felt a small flush of pride at how well she'd learned. That was the last time the button felt simple. A Tuesday afternoon, about 6 weeks after the 3 a.m. incident, I'd been running errands, grocery store, pharmacy, the post office. I came home in the late afternoon, arms full of bags, fumbling with my keys. Cookie met me at the door the way she always did, spinning and making that high-pitched sound that means she's genuinely delighted to see me. Then she stopped. She trotted to her button board and pressed twice, very deliberately. Stranger. Home. I set the bags down slowly. My hands had gone cold. I looked around the entryway. Nothing out of place. The locks were intact. I did a full sweep of the house. Closets, bathroom, under the bed. I even opened the garage. Nothing. But Cookie kept going back to the buttons. Kept pressing that combination like she was insisting. Stranger. Home. That was when she pressed a third button. Smell. I stood there in my kitchen with a papillon staring up at me, and I felt something cold slide down my spine. She could smell someone who had been in my house, or near it, someone unfamiliar. I went outside. I walked the perimeter of the house, scanning the ground the way you do when you don't know what you're looking for. I found it at the side gate, a footprint in the mud beside the garden bed. Deep heel, big sole, not mine. I didn't sleep well that night. I bought cameras the next morning. 4 of them. Front door, back door, driveway, and one covering the side gate. I installed them all myself in an afternoon. Checked the app obsessively for 3 days. Saw nothing. I started to relax. Then Greg jogged past my house. I knew Greg from work. He was my direct supervisor at the time. Competent. Professional. Always friendly in the particular way that makes you vaguely uneasy because you can't identify why. He jogged past the front of my house and recognized me in the yard. He stopped, waved, mentioned he lived in the neighborhood, just a few blocks over. Small world, isn't it? He asked if he could come in and get a glass of water. I said yes. I don't know why. The social pressure of it, maybe. The awkwardness of saying no to someone you work for. Cookie met him at the door. She didn't spin. She didn't make the happy sound. She stood in the hallway and growled, low, soft, and utterly certain. Then she turned to her board. Stranger, smell. I heard my own voice in my head saying she just needs time to warm up and everything is fine and this is your supervisor. This is someone you know. I offered him water. He stayed 12 minutes. He stood in my living room and made small talk and I watched Cookie watch him the entire time, rigid and unhappy, her eyes tracking him the way they track something she doesn't trust. When he left, I locked the door and stood with my back against it. 2 days later, at 2:47 in the morning, my camera app sent me a motion alert. I watched Greg cross my driveway in the dark, unhurried, as if he had every right to be there. He walked directly to the flower pot by the front steps, the large ceramic one with the ferns, and lifted it. He reached under it. I had kept a spare key there for 3 years. I didn't sleep at all that night. In the morning I called a locksmith, then my phone, then my HR department. I changed every lock in the house. I filed a police report and applied for a restraining order. I went to my employer with the camera footage and Greg was terminated within the week. I felt safe for the first time in months. That was 6 weeks ago. Yesterday, Cookie woke me at 2 a.m. Stranger. I checked the cameras immediately. Nothing. I checked every room. I stood at every window. I sat on the kitchen floor with Cookie in my lap and told myself it was over. Greg was gone. The locks were changed. I was safe. Stranger. Home. She pressed it twice more before she settled, and even then she didn't sleep. She sat facing the front door until dawn. Today I was working at my desk when she came and found me. She pressed 3 buttons. Mad. Stranger. Mad. I've never heard her combine those before. I sat with it for a moment, trying to parse the grammar of a dog, trying to understand what she was telling me. Then I did what I always do when something feels wrong. I opened my laptop and searched for Greg. I found his obituary. He died 2 days ago. The article was brief. It said he took his own life. It listed his survivors, his former employer, his neighborhood, my neighborhood. I read it 3 times. I put the laptop down. Cookie came and pressed her nose against my hand the way she does when she knows I'm upset. And I sat there in my kitchen trying to calculate the geography of this, trying to figure out if the timing meant what I thought it meant. If Greg died 2 days ago, then Greg is not who she's warning me about now. Someone else has been watching. Someone else has been in my yard. Someone else knows where I keep things. And Cookie, who has 20 words and uses every single one with purpose. Cookie who was right about the UPS driver and right about Greg and right about the key under the flower pot. Cookie just pressed mad twice around a name she doesn't have yet. She's been right before. I don't know what to do. I've checked the cameras. I've walked the yard. I've changed the locks again and moved the car and called a friend who said I could come stay for a few days if I needed to. I'm sitting here writing this while Cookie sits facing the front door. She hasn't moved. She hasn't pressed anything else. But she's watching. She's still watching. And I've learned, over the past few months, that when Cookie watches that door with that particular stillness, that patient, certain, animal focus, she isn't wrong. She's never been wrong. I don't know who's out there, but she does. And I think she's trying very hard to tell me.